How is this multi-purpose anti-corruption agency is going to work? Is it the same? Is that where the anti-corruption coordinating council is popping?
Yes. The models you adopt for your country depends on what you want to do. So some models have preventive, educative, strong advocacy to prevent even the crime from occurring. That's one model. Another model is a very tight prosecutorial model. Another model, which is this one, is about should anti-corruption agencies prosecute or investigate.
Which model do we have?
We have the combined model. In other words, the EFCC can investigate and prosecute. And there's nothing wrong with it conceptually if it's working.
But they can prevent too, because they have this reporting institutions wherein, the reporting instructions. I think if you deposit certain money, banks report to the commission.
Yes, but how well is it going? That's the issue. So I think the main point we ought to keep in mind is how well is the EFCC and other law enforcement agencies, lawyers, judges, how well are we performing in the overall strategy to combat corruption?
I'm happy you're making it an all-encompassing one, saying an all other law enforcement agencies, because it was only yesterday Mr. Falana did ask the question, why single out the EFCC, making it look like the EFCC is being singled out. But if we really want to get to the bottom of it, which means that we must talk about having results, which most Nigerians will be interested in, how best do you think that all other agencies can be brought on this kind of path to making them work the way we would want them to work? It seems like an institutional problem that doesn't mean that the EFCC is suffering from alone.
No, I think the problem was how the EFCC was established. The EFCC was actually established by pressure brought up on Nigeria by the OECD countries. It is probably the fastest legislation ever passed. So we needed to be members of the Financial Action Task Force. But to do that, we needed a local law. So President Obasanjo used his weight to push through that law. And for him, it now became his baby. So one forgot the ICPC, that by statute and authority have the powers to actually investigate political office holders, not the EFCC. The EFCC's mandate is narrow, economic and financial crimes. But what's happening, and that's why attention is being drawn to the EFCC, is that they're everywhere. Yesterday I read in the papers, they've jumped into pensions. They're everywhere. They're in all the states. It's not possible. The work is just simply too huge to be in 36 states and 774 local governments. Now they're saying they're going to probe banks. So the issue is, can they really do it?
If all others have been effective, do you think that the FCC would have been everywhere?
If what?
If other agencies
have
been carrying out their tasks, for instance, the ICPC.
Come on. Don't answer that. You remember, well, if you don't remember, I'll tell you. Obasanjo had a special liking for Nuhu Ribadu. And therefore, EFCC became the rock star of anti-corruption, to the exclusion of others. That's the problem. So what I'd like to see now is to empower the police. The police has a very strong, serious fraud unit, but it's disempowered. To empower the ICPC, to empower also the EFCC, so there is an institutional mechanism to combat corruption on a specialized, process. Not just the EFCC is become a giant, carrying on far too much responsibility for such a small-based organization. I would like to know how many staff the EFCC has. I'd like to know how many lawyers they have. So those are the challenges.
What if the commission doesn't share the same view and they say, look, we are fine?
No, they cannot say they are fine because it's our money. How can they say they are fine? It's our money. Let me assume that 10 trillion naira has been stolen. How can they say it's their money? How can, without naming names so that channels would not be sued for libel, there are at least 6 to 7 governors who left office 10 years ago whose cases have not progressed one jot in the courts. So how do you, so in any case, even if the EFCC claims to be successful, that is the precise debate that President Mahmoud is calling for. That's the precise
Even
debate.
though they say one of the former governors, his assets were forfeited, he was sentenced.
There's
to
no question
2 years.
that the EFCC has also made some progress. I don't deny that. That's not my point. I don't deny that. But how efficacious have they been?
So do you think that they should prosecute?
No, personally, I don't think so.
Okay, so this is not just about
this is me.
EFCC or other anti-graft agencies.
Yes.
They should not prosecute.
Yeah, absolutely. That's my own personal view. Nothing to do with the NBA or anybody else's view. I do not think that investigation and prosecution go well together. And one of the arguments made against combining this is that the investigators have what we call the investigator's bias. Once you go to a surgeon, he's going to cut you. If you go to the EFCC and they investigate, they'll just be looking for evidence to take you to court. But the prosecutor has a discretion. He can evaluate the evidence and say, no, I don't think this is a good case to take to the courts. And in the old days, the police would investigate and turn the file to the DPP for his prosecutorial discretion. That's what I favor. On the other hand, the disadvantage of separating both is that the prosecutor doesn't have the insights that the investigator has. So some countries favor that combined approach. But whatever it is, let's debate it. Let's not get abused by the EFCC. And in any case, I don't want to get into what the EFCC said about lawyers. Let's not go into that.
Well, we're not sure if that's what Markware is going.
All right,
but,
okay.
Let's find out from Markware.
I wanted to start from, the direct quote of the NBA president. He says, as a start, we commend the efforts of the Economic and Financial Crimes Institution for the work it's doing and for its modest achievement. However, going forward, the NBA must demand the reform of the institution itself. We need to define its mandate more narrowly and more clearly. And then he says, in my view, its broad objective as an investigative and prosecutorial agency should be reviewed. I recommend strongly that the EFCC be limited to investigation. Why not prosecution?
Because they don't have the skills. That's why. And in order to answer the question you've posed, we need to then ask.
So do you think they fail because they lack the skills for prosecution, or there isn't sufficient evidence in terms of investigation? Why do you think the EFCC is failing?
Generally because investigators lack the skills of prosecution. An investigator is a policeman, A prosecutor is a lawyer. Two different professions. But I'm not saying that I will want the EFCC to do it one way or the other. I'm simply saying that let us, in the context of Nigeria, debate the issue. Is there anything wrong with that? I don't think so. But Mr. Mahmoud has given his own views.
And a lot of people agree with that. I mean...
Yeah.
They say, in the context of Nigeria, the moment you separate those two agencies, or you divide the powers, as it were, then we most likely would not see any prosecution, because you have also identified political will as a crucial ingredient in terms of how any agency of government is able to do its job.
Yeah, but what are you saying, therefore, that the prosecutors, if the will was given to them, can't prosecute cases? I don't think that's the correct way to look at it. The correct way to look at it in the context of what we're discussing, which is the EFCC, is to ask, have they been successful? If not, why not? Is it that they are doing too many things? Investigating, prosecuting, and assets recovery? Do they have capacity? These are all the questions. We can't have the answers to these questions unless Mr. Magu and the EFCC, the CJ of Nigeria, and all actors and stakeholders are prepared to say, we need to look at it. That, I think, for me, is the central issue. We need to look at the problem.
But as presently constituted now,
yes,
prosecution now is the office of the AGF. And if they were to separate it?
No, the AGF is the Chief Law Enforcement Officer. But various statutes give prosecutorial powers to different agencies. So the police force has a prosecutorial power.
I thought he said they were going to restrict the police to just investigation.
Yes, but unfortunately, the way the statutes have been written, so the customs, for instance, can prosecute. They can. You remember Femi's point about if you have the power to prosecute in your statute, then you can. But that's not the conceptual question. The conceptual question is, has it worked out? Go to the magistrate's court and you see what's happening. It's bedlam, because policemen prosecute in the magistrate's courts, and often they have no basic idea. So we need to interrogate this concept of whether prosecution properly lies under the EFCC. And I'm not too sure it does, because I'm not too sure they've done that part of their work terribly well. So we need to now begin to say, what are the models that we can look at?
But as it is now, if the offices of the AGF at the federal and states were to do a lot more than they're doing, we will be discussing this today in terms of whether or not the Commission, EFCC, is working properly or not.
But that's the mistake. The attorneys general of the various states carry 90% of the burden of criminal prosecution. The EFCC is the rock star. That's the problem. The EFCC is just doing a minuscule amount of work. Maybe 5% of the load of. Do you know how many cases are in the magistrate's court in Lagos every day? The EFCC is just the glamour boy. They've got the show. So there's a lot of, and of course, because the big criminal cases get to go to them. So we all talk about the EFCC. But what we're now saying is it not time to review whether the mandate is not too wide?
And it coincides with the time we'll have to anchor at that point. We also have to thank you for coming on.
Thank you very much, as usual.
Olisa Agbakoba is an SAN and the former president of the NBA and a development lawyer.
Absolutely.